forces of the id are continually at work. They are pushing us, they are surging, but they are not open to rational awareness. They are part of what Freud calls the unconscious. Now, these crude instincts must be restrained, but they demand immediate satisfaction. But we can't immediately satisfy these desires, not if we live in a civilized society. So a moral conscience must be developed to restrain the demands of the id. And this moral conscience is developed from parental restrictions, societal restraints, religious teachings, and this part of the psyche that acts as a moral conscience, Freud called the superego. So we have two parts of his three-part theory of the psyche. We have the id and we have the superego. So that there is a tension in humans between desire and conscience. Desire being associated with the id, conscience or restraint associated with the superego. So they are in conflict with each other. To mediate or manage this conflict, a conscious self is constructed out of a process of socialization, of how we are socialized by our parents and our teachers and such. Freud called this conscious self the I. And again, the English translation used the Latin word for I, which is ego. So we know it today of what Freud is talking about. It is called the ego. The ego allows us to manage things in our lives. It finds compromises between desire and conscience. It finds socially accepted ways to satisfy desires. And so I like to put this in something of a humorous way, but there's a serious point to this. The id says, I want it. The superego says, you can't have it. The ego says, I've got a plan. Okay, a way to satisfy these desires. So I move in a little bit. We are finished with Freud's three-part theory of the human psyche. Freud says that one of the things about us as humans, we want to avoid pain, especially mental anguish. Freud admired the Greek philosopher Epicurus, by the way, and Epicurus told us this, that one of the things we most especially want to avoid is mental anguish or mental pain. And so this is something Freud developed, a theory, very simple, and we've seen something like this before, but it's called the pleasure principle. We're here, and that what that means real simply is that we as humans, we want to experience pleasurable sensations. We want to avoid painful ones. So, defense mechanisms. This is a fairly big word here for Freud. Defense mechanisms are formed to protect the ego from painful thoughts. And I'm going to go through a couple of these defense mechanisms that Freud identified. And the purpose of these, they're part of our psyche, and they are meant to protect the psyche or the ego there from painful thoughts that would be painful to us. So one of these defense mechanisms that Freud identified in his early work with women suffering from hysteria, he called repression. So this is the first defense mechanism that we're talking about here with Freud today. If someone it is put this way, if someone has suffered some type of emotional trauma, he or she will block this memory from consciousness. It's too painful to face and acknowledge. But to Freud, the psyche resembles a hydraulic mechanism that would be something like a steam engine. And so if energy is blocked in one area, this will generate pressure in another area. If a memory is blocked or repressed, it enters the unconscious, but this frustrated energy demands to be released. It will come out or manifest itself in physical symptoms. Now, if this repressed material can be brought to consciousness, it can be confronted and recognized, and this frustrated energy is released. There is now no need for manifestations in symptoms or other strange behaviors. And what you have produced is a type of catharsis, which is purging or getting rid of. And this is one of the tasks of Freud's new therapy. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about this. I'm going to come back a little bit later in the lecture and talk to you some more about Freudian therapy. But I will mention this right now, that one of the tasks, one part of Freud's therapy is what is called the talking cure.